The taboo Spain won't omit about Leonor. A heavy curtain drawn just enough to let light touch the floor. The room remains still, not empty, controlled. This is how taboos survive here. Not through denial, but through timing. Through silence calibrated so precisely it appears natural. For Princess Leonor, the unspoken truth is not about behavior, nor belief, nor desire. It is about when the institution can afford choice, and when it cannot. Spain does not fear scandal. It has survived far worse. What it fears is mistiming. Because in monarchies, timing is governance. Every public appearance is a clock. Every absence, a signal. Every delay, a decision made without words. This is the living thread of continuity. By the second minute, the assumption fractures. The audience is trained to search for secrets in personalities. But the real taboo here is structural. It lives in calendars, in schedules not released, in thresholds no one names aloud. National identity is woven into these rituals because they replace debate with rhythm. They turn uncertainty into choreography. And choreography must never appear improvised. By the fifth minute, the phrase returns, quieter, heavier. What Spain will not admit is that the future sovereign does not fully own her timeline. The institution does. Readiness is measured not in confidence, but in consequence. Not in preparation, but in what the system can absorb without destabilizing itself. This is why certain conversations never happen publicly. Not because the answers are dangerous, but because the moment might be. By minute 8, the deeper mystery settles in. There are doors that open only once. Roles that, once stepped into, cannot be reshaped without cost. The silence around timing is not avoidance. It is containment. Across the Atlantic, this restraint is interpreted carefully. In the United States, it is read as institutional maturity, a system pacing itself against public impatience. In the United Kingdom, history sharpens understanding. They recognize the cost of letting timing slip from control. Canada and Australia see familiarity, constitutional distance protecting continuity. Germany reads it structurally, legitimacy maintained through discipline, not sentiment. By the midpoint, strain becomes visible. Not in behavior, but in expectation. A modern audience demands clarity. An ancient institution demands patience. Here lies the pressure point. At minute 14, the point of no return emerges. A moment when postponement stops being protection and starts becoming narrative. And narratives, once formed externally, are harder to reclaim than authority itself. This is what the taboo guards against. Not change, but uncontrolled interpretation. By minute 19, the future risk takes shape. If timing is misjudged, symbolism fractures. If silence lasts too long, speculation fills the gap. And speculation erodes trust faster than any declaration ever could. That is the true danger Spain manages quietly, not rebellion, not refusal, but misalignment between visibility and authority. And in the final moments, the words return one last time. Not a confession, a boundary. The institution holds its breath. History watches the clock, and the moment, when it arrives, will not ask whether anyone is ready, only whether the timing was right. The silence does not lift after the first truth is spoken. It deepens. Because the taboo is not a single secret. It is a system of restraint that must be renewed every day. For Princess Leonor, the institution's greatest discipline is not control over action, it is control over sequence. What happens first? What must wait? What can never appear rushed? In Spain, succession is not a moment. It is a process stretched carefully across years, designed to look inevitable only in hindsight. Anything that feels premature weakens authority. Anything that feels delayed invites doubt. This is why timing becomes taboo. Because to discuss it openly would be to admit that legitimacy is managed, not assumed. By the third minute, another misunderstanding falls away. The question is not whether Leonor is capable. Capability is expected. It is whether the institution can introduce her next role without exposing the machinery behind the crown. Monarchies survive by appearing effortless. Effort is the one thing they are never allowed to show. This is the living thread of continuity. Across ministries and palaces, calendars are aligned like instruments in an orchestra. Military protocol, constitutional milestones, public sentiment measured not by polls, but by tone. Everything waits for everything else. By minute 5, the phrase returns, not louder, but sharper. The secret is that there is no single date circled in red. There are windows, openings that must be used before they close. Missed timing does not cause collapse, it causes drift. And drift is fatal to symbols. By minute 8, the deeper tension becomes visible. A generation raised on transparency now watches an institution built on delay. The crown must teach patience without appearing evasive. It must preserve mystery without inviting suspicion. This balance is precarious. In Washington, analysts speak quietly of optics and sequence, of how allies read maturity through restraint. In London, precedent looms, they know how timing mistakes echo for decades. Canada and Australia interpret Spain's silence as constitutional caution, familiar and deliberate. Germany watches for structural discipline, whether the institution can still command tempo in an age that accelerates everything. By the midpoint, pressure accumulates. Not inside the palace. Outside it, the public begins to sense anticipation without explanation, expectation without narrative, and when narrative is absent, others supply it. This is the approaching strain. At minute 14, the point of no return clarifies. Once the public begins to ask why now instead of when, the institution has already lost control of timing. From that moment on, every delay looks defensive. Every step forward looks reactive. This is the danger Spain is determined to avoid. By minute 19, the future threat sharpens. Not a crisis of succession, but a crisis of interpretation. A moment when the crown's careful pacing could be mistaken for uncertainty rather than mastery. That is why the taboo holds. Why timing remains unspoken. Why silence is preserved even when explanation would be easier. And in the final moments, the words return, unchanged. Because once the clock becomes visible, it begins to rule the institution instead of serving it. The palace remains still. The calendar continues to turn. And history waits, not impatiently, but precisely, for the moment when silence becomes action.